What has really been depressing things of late? We, of course, had that tax stimulus come in Friday, a week ago, and markets went on an absolute tear at that point. But reality seems to be sinking in. What is that reality?
Good morning. That really simply is slowing growth. The growth has been weak for a few months, but there's a lot of hope that the new government has come in and the budget will have measures to revive growth. Clearly, we didn't see that. And even the post facto measures to arrest the negative feedback loop has not yet been adequate to revive growth as seen in numbers. We do expect in our base case that the measures we have seen till now should work and will help normalize economic activity over the next few months. But yeah, the data prints even now are not good. Secondly, I think what's happened over the last week or so is renewed concerns around the banking system with issues about stability, etc. We saw one of the cooperative banks being put under RBI control. So those are other issues which is hurting market sentiment in the near term and creating worries whether this stabilizes quickly or we have more to come going ahead.
Okay, Gautam, the thing here also is there were a lot of concerns about fiscal maneuverability. How much of those fiscal worries have been assuaged, if you will, by that stimulus plan, those corporate tax cuts here? Or does more need to be done? And more need to be done by, of course, the RBI at the end of this week when they decide on interest rates?
Absolutely. So we do expect RBI to continue the easing policy, including a more aggressive policy towards easing of liquidity. Going back to fiscal, in fact, the corporate tax rate cut, which India announced, and that was a really big one, that actually increased worries around the fiscal part for the near term. Even in our view, that's a great move from a next 2-3 year perspective. It potentially solves India's structural drag on growth, but doesn't do much for the near-term growth pickup. And it has a fiscal cost, obviously. So it actually added to the fiscal worries. In our view, what it also implies, and we've seen some media reports around that over the last few days and weeks, is that privatization could be on the agenda. Because a piecemeal disinvestment approach will not be enough or may not be enough even to meet fiscal targets which government has from disinvestment. But to meet this whole from corporate tax cut, privatization is the only possible solution. And therefore, we do believe that privatization could well be on the anvil, which will possibly help the fiscal targets as well as add to the reforms narrative around India.
Gautam, it's Juliet here in Singapore. Overall, UBS underweight in India equities. Is there any change to your strategy? Have you been looking at different sectors that you see some potential in?
So our APAC strategist moved India to a neutral stance a week or so back. From a local India market strategy perspective, our Nifty target for June 20 is 12,300, and our upside and downside scenarios with that Nifty target is kind of a constructive, positive bias for Nifty, primarily based on increased hopes for the medium term, a positive reforms narrative aiding multiples, but with the caveat that the near-term growth will take time, and we basically are presuming that the worries around the banking system or slower growth near term will get resolved in the next few months.